Now today, because of flu, I become Jain monk. Abhaniji and my brothers, sisters are extremely happy come here. As I think most of you know, I always talk completely informal way and also frank. So, and I think one reason to be informal, my English very poor. So, just to talk, express what I feel, that's all. So, I very much appreciate all those speakers. This is very, as they express their deep feeling and support our cause. So thank you very much. And also, now from different part of the world, many countries, something like, or representative, or I don't know, the individual can represent their own country. Not necessarily government, but people. That's okay. So therefore, I very much appreciate there's a large number of people come here to participate, try to make some contribution regarding solution of Tibetan problem. So I very much appreciate it. Then, firstly, I want to tell you, usually when I talk with the people who gather for Tibetan problem, I usually telling them, some people, when they heard Tibetan issue, it's just a human rights violation, human rights issue. Of course, they are also part of the Tibetan problem. But Tibetan problem, there are some other sort of aspects. One aspect, you also touched about environment. Some expert, ecologist expert, including some Chinese ecologists, they describe Tibetan plateau is as a third pole because effect for global warming from Tibetan plateau is as much as North Pole, South Pole. So they describe Tibetan plateau is third pole. So it is very much related with the global sort of warming. Right? Then major rivers, which I think the basis of lives of, I think, over a billion human beings. Those rivers originally come from Tibetan sort of glacier there, Tibetan area, like from Pakistan up to mainland China. Major rivers come from there. So that's the question of, I think over a billion human beings' life depend on these rivers. Then particularly here in India, they like Brahmaputra and these major rivers, they come from Tibet. So the origin of these rivers, other country, but the user of these rivers, basically millions of Indians. So you have the right to express your concern about the Tibetan ecology, because that's the ultimate source of these rivers. That's one aspect. This has nothing to do with the politics, actually. Now, fortunately, I think since Dorongchen you see, they eventually they realize the importance of preservation of forests and these things. Before that, there's no idea about ecology, like from a Soviet Union, isn't it? So during Dzongchen time, they give some, the instruction, some area no longer sort of deforestation. But due to corruption, this is still going on. And recently, now for example, because of flood in some Golok area, you see some damage. So there's some Chinese actually, you see, wrote article that sort of the tragedy, not nature, not nature sort of tragedy, but man-made tragedy. Because in that area, they previously thick forest, but last few decades, all these forests completely destroyed. So they concluded, you see, this tragedy, essentially man-made tragedy. So preservation of Tibetan ecology is also long run immensely important for mainland China. So therefore, this is one aspect of Tibetan issue. Then another aspect of Tibetan issue is Tibetan culture. Actually, Tibetan culture, I think since Buddhism reached Tibet, Tibetan culture much sort of developed. So one time, Morarji Desai, you see, when he became Prime Minister, I wrote a letter, congratulation. In his reply, he mentioned Indian civilization, Tibetan civilization, two branches of one Bodhi tree. So it is very true. In any way, I usually describe Indian, our Guru. So usually I mentioned Guruji. Because one Tibetan master, great scholar, as well as practitioner, he expressed the till Indian light reached Tibet, in spite snow land, usually it's a snow white, and very white snow, bright, but till India's light reached Tibet, that snow land remained dark. So I always describe myself as firstly, we Tibetan as a sort of Chela or student of India. Indian, so our relation is something. So in any way, and then recently, I also describe myself as one way you see messenger of Indian ancient thought. Ahimsa is come from India, Indian thought. Ahimsa is action. Action entirely depends on motivation. So, in order to carry genuine ahimsa, the key factor is compassionate attitude. So, my promotion, my effort to promote compassion is actually promotion of ahimsa, main thing like that. So, that also India's message. Then religious harmony. India is the only country all major religious traditions live together. The other day we have discussed some. You mentioned Chavaka, these things. At that our meeting, I really learned something very good, very, very useful. So the religious harmony. Some mischievous people always there, some problems here and there, it's understandable. But overall, India is I think, home of all major religions. lived together. Not in modern time, but last more than 2,000 years, something like that. So this is really a good example to rest of the world. In ancient time, okay, little bit sort of isolate. Now today's sort of modern world, heavily interdependent, and many society become multi-culture, multi-religion. So sometimes it also causing some problem. So look, India, there are something to learn from Indian tradition. So I describe myself as a messenger of Indian ancient of thought. Then also, you see, I mentioned I now son of India. So I think 2 years ago, some group of Chinese brothers, sisters, and then one asked me, why you mentioned yourself as a son of India? Then I mentioned, my brain, each cell of my brain filled by Nalanda thought. Then this physical, then about 50 years, this physical survived, last 50 years, this physical survived by Indian dal, Indian rice. So therefore I describe myself as a son of India. So then he understands. No further questions. So in any way, regarding Tibetan cultural heritage, I think very much the India sort of spirit of harmony, of sort of respect, mutual respect among religious tradition. I think one clear indication was, I think, at least 3-4 centuries ago, a small Muslim come from, as a trader, come from Ladakh area, then eventually settled. I was told, 5th Dalai Lama provide land for construction of mosque. And when I was young, in Potala, some sort of what's the auspicious day, auspicious days. There's some, the Muslim, they say come to Potala. I asked, why now this? I mean, these people used to come. That auspicious day, they usually get some, or say something like offering or something gift from some Tibetan sort of department in Potala. So this clearly shows respect for the tradition. Of course, generally, you see people make sort of distinction, Muslim, different. But of course, respect that. And then more important is, since Buddhism, which come from India, mainly Nalanda, the main message is, in theoretical field, message of interdependency. That is very similar to that of quantum physics or theory of relativity. It's very useful, very much relevant to today's world. And then the practical side, practice side, compassion, infinite compassion. So, because of that, Tibetan community, of course, generally non-vegetarian, but still their way of life is very much in the spirit of compassion. So I can state, Tibetan Buddhist culture is culture of peace, culture of compassion. So therefore, then I think many visitors, including many Han brothers, sisters, who have some sort of thinking power, they notice once they visit Tibet area, they found the Tibetans are usually more jovial, more peaceful, more sort of what's it, humble way. And whereas those Han people, whenever you touch, Sulo, 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 go away, like this. So these, you see, people, you see, notice now number of Chinese Han people also now begin to realize. The other day, I think 2 years ago, I met one occasion meeting with some Chinese scholars or writers from, some of them from mainland China. They expressed to me, in mainland China, human value or moral ethics, which several thousand years of Chinese tradition, these deliberately destroyed. As a result, full of corruption, full of injustice. Society as a whole, very unhappy. Thinking only money, 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 money. Nothing else. So they told me, they expressed to me with tear, as far as authoritarian system is concerned, sooner or later it will change. It cannot remain. But the restoration of the 1,000-year-old Chinese, or also the moral ethics, these things, very difficult to restore. It takes longer time. In that field, they are hope putting on Tibetan. Tibetan can help to bring compassion for moral ethics. So when these people, when these intellectuals, you see, express, I really feel very much sort of, what's the additional sort of responsibility like that. So now in the West, whether believer or non-believer, whether you see people individually have genuine interest about religion or not, everybody now agree the modern society, and including modern education, lacking the teaching of moral ethics. Because usually moral ethics must be based on religious faith. So that becomes narrow. Right? So Buddha's teaching, Indian tradition, the other day, I just mentioned, you see, we discussed about, you see, the India's tradition, the one school of thought we call Charvaka, who deny existence of God, existence of Buddha, or existence of next life, all these things. So this guy, nihilist view. So in philosophical field, many argue and even condemn, but person who hold that view refer rishi, sage. So 1,000 years in this country, the principle of secularism. Secularism does not mean negative towards religion, but rather respect all religion, including non-believer. So I always talking religion because of the religious matter. I am Buddhist. This is my business. I am not promoting Buddhism in other traditionally non-Buddhist country. I am never. But I share the essence of all religion, particularly Buddhism, the way of presenting about these values as a human good quality. So that's very much spirit of secularism. So I always trying to promote these things. So a number of people really showing interest. And now some important institutions like Wisconsin University and Stanford University and Emory University. As far as I know, these three universities very active to carry some further research work. How much effect through some kind of training of mind, particularly training of compassion, how much effect their body, their intelligence, their also their behavior. So already some positive indication they already found. So just a few days ago, I was in America. So I visited these institutions. So now you see the number of scientists really showing interest about some of the technique or also the view of Buddhism. So eventually I make distinction. Our meeting with scientists, not Buddhism as a whole, but part of Buddhism. That is Buddhist science. Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy. And then third, Buddhist religion. Buddhist religion for Buddhist. Buddhist science and Buddhist philosophy is something universal. So now, I think I think 30, 40 years ago, I noticed one day communist sort of the paper, which mentioned the knowledge of modern science develop, then blind faith will go automatically. But now seems the opposite. Really well-known top scientists now really showing genuine sort of interest about, Buddhist science, and through that way, Buddhist teaching also. So preservation of Tibetan culture. I do not consider just interest for 6 million Tibetan people, but I think larger community, firstly in the Central Asia, the whole northern Himalayan region, and then Kazakh, then Mongolia, and some part of Russian Federation. And then more important, China. According to some information, now in number of Buddhists in mainland China, over 200 millions. Nowadays, almost every week, some Chinese from mainland China come to see me. Some of them with great difficulties, but they can. So, preservation of Tibetan Buddhist culture. I usually make distinction, Buddhism and Buddhist culture. Because, you see, Buddhism is for Buddhist, but the Buddhist culture mainly related with community. So like those Tibetan Muslim, they are religiously, they are Muslim, but their way of life is very much in the spirit of Buddhist culture. So therefore, in order to build happy society, peaceful society, Tibetan Buddhist culture can make some contribution. So therefore, preservation of Tibetan Buddhist culture, not only for Tibetan people, but also I feel large number of people, particularly millions of young Chinese. So this is I feel. So I want to share some of those Chinese communists who are thinking very narrow-minded, isn't it? Just one-sided. Tibet case, their only concern is how to keep Tibet. No idea what is Tibetan culture, what is the value of Tibetan culture. So any sort of Tibetan unique or separate sort of identity there, they feel fear. Oh, that might cause false separate. This is, I think, short-sightedness. So, some speakers already mentioned now, you see the language, these things now really. Oh, I know you mentioned. Sorry, very recent now, another sort of movement, restriction, the Tibetan language, these things happen. So I want to share with those narrow-minded Chinese sort of brothers, sisters, please look more holistic way. And from all direction, from all sort of dimension, not just a political dimension, but some wider way. That's important. That's one aspect of Tibetan issue. Then another Tibetan aspect of issue is human rights violation. Human rights violation is a symptom. The main cause, you see there, we have our own language. With that language, I think today, as far as I observed there, as a result of observation and personal contact, I think Tibetan Buddhism is the most complete, richest Buddhist tradition that exists in Tibetan language. Now, some scholars from the West who have interest about Buddhism in general, particularly the Mahayana Buddhism, they very much sort of, they consider the reliable sort of translation, the Tibetan translation. They consider like that. So therefore, the negative attitude towards Tibetan cultural heritage, including language, that naturally Tibetans feel very uncomfortable, resent. That caused human rights violation. One day, about more than 5 years ago, one time, one Tibetan, of course, I met, who are profession in medicine field, in medical field. He mentioned, because of his professional sort of thing, so his salary, very good, his accommodation, very good, and regarding his children's education, also very good. No need any worry. But he had, being as a Tibetan, in mentally, some kind of overwhelming sort of feeling, very unhappy. When he mentioned that, tear comes. So these Chinese leaders should know, just provide some house or more better facility, it's not sufficient, not the answer solving this sort of problem. Show respect to Tibetan culture. Let them carry all these sort of preservation work, and also including what's the environment, these things. And any sort of what's the mining from Karate, mining natural resources from Tibetan area, all from part of that sort of profit must go to the local people. Then okay. Then I think things will change. Otherwise, you see, they're just sending more troops, more sort of the security personnel, and more sort of sophisticated mission, won't solve. And more suppression, more beating Tibetan spirit becomes harder and harder. That's a fact. Now 60 years passed. Their old method, now I think obsolete survey. Obsolete survey. Obsolete. Last 60 years, it failed. Now, future also will fail. Now, must find more reasonable attitude. So that's, I think, I want to share with you. And then another sort of aspect of the problem, that is Tibet, geographically between China and India. So the good relation, genuine good relation on the basis of mutual trust between India and China is very essential, because obviously two most populated nations, and also both have nuclear weapon. So genuine relation, not just a few nice words, not that way, but genuine trust is very essential. Genuine Hindi chini bye bye. Oh, it's really necessary. But genuine Hindi chini bye bye, in order to develop that, the trust is very essential. So now, not only relation between India and China, but China with other neighboring states and also whole world. I think trust is very, very essential. So long, everything stays secret. Then you see, people get more suspicion. So I always share with my Chinese friend or some other people also. Now, 1.3 billion Chinese people have every right to know the reality. And 1.3 billion Chinese people also have the ability to judge what is right, what is wrong. Under that circumstances, under that reality, censorship on their own people is immoral. That creates more suspicion within their own people, more distrust. And the answer or response from the government, more force. That brings more fear. Fear destroys trust. Once trust is no longer there, how can develop genuine friendship? And without that, how can develop harmonious society? Which we now emphasize that. Now, harmonious society, dealing with animal, maybe okay, one stick, and then little bit of beating, then may come closer. But we are human beings. Over billion Chinese people, also human beings, cannot bring harmonious society by force, but by trust, but by friendship. So that's sometimes I little bit sort of reservation. Change overnight in China, a democratic sort of system. Sometimes I a little bit doubt. Because the Chinese people, millions in rural area, uneducated, and economically also very poor. And then the overall China never experienced genuine democracy. So therefore, overnight big change, too much chaotic situation may develop. Therefore, gradual change is, I think, worthwhile. You know, the last few years I mentioned Communist Party. In early period, they really did something, and they really made some contribution. Good thing. Now they, frankly, because of the obviously many people now lost their faith. So now I'm here thinking retirement. So the party as well, I think gradually retirement with grace is much better, isn't it? This is not at all anti-communist. When I first visited to Taiwan, I told the Taiwanese, the Kuomintang leader, 我不是反共. Well, this Chinese word, that means I am not anti-communism. I mentioned to the Chinese the comintang they sort of had, or Lenten or something, Lenten, vice chairman or something. And he responded, he is anti-communist. He mentioned like that. So, it is not secret. I still, as far as socio-economy theory is concerned, I am Marxist. There's no question. But I am not a Leninist. From Lenin, Stalin, I think too much cruelty, too much sort of suspicion, and too much sort of control. Totally against. Oh, sorry. Before, because of lunch come, now something go inside now. So Chairman Mo's case, in early period, I really believe they really dedicated well-being of people, particularly working class people or needy people, people who have much less privilege. When I was in China, 1954-55, I met several times Chairman Mo, and I often used to telling my Chinese friend, my hand has some blessing from Chairman Mo's hand. All those younger generation, I think never have that sort of opportunity meeting Chairman Mo. I have. So at that time, Chairman Mo, now here. One day, now of course it took a little bit too long. Okay. I just used to felt, you see, this is a big gathering who related with Tibetan issue. So maybe some useful to share some of my experience, isn't it? That is, you see it. Tuche, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, share this. So, then okay. At that meeting, you see, he inquired any criticism about party sort of worker or party members. I think the audience also seems, I think, quite intelligent. Remain silent. Then Chairman Mo, you see, put on one letter which he received from his own native place, from ordinary villager, some complaint about the party sort of had, the local party had. So he mentioned, there are now such cases there. We must pay more attention about these things. So that night, that meeting, one occasion Chairman Mo turned to me, you Tibetan, in the past, very strong, but now you become very weak. So we came to help you. After 20 years, you become more healthy, more stronger. Then it is your turn to help us. Chairman Mo told me that. Then now this flag. One occasion, Chairman Mo asked me whether you have a Tibetan flag or not. I told him, yes, we have. Then Chairman Mo told me, your flag must keep beside the national flag, the red flag. So, one occasion in Berlin, some our Germans or what's it, the Tibetan support groups, you see, one meeting. So they usually, you see, because of that, carry a Tibetan flag on their sort of what's it, places. So I told them, when you carry this flag, as inside Tibet, any Tibetan who carry this flag, they consider spiritist movement. But then I told them, when you receive some local Chinese officials, because of the protest to you, then tell them, Dalai Lama got full permission from Chairman Mao himself to keep this flag. So we are following Chairman Mao's sort of, what's it, advice, isn't it? And then also, I'm telling his Chinese friend, communist, Chairman Mao often say, communists should receive criticism from others as well as self-criticism. Without that, like fish without water, communists cannot survive. So he often stated that. So nowadays, they are not practicing that, but we are practicing that. So in any way, and then also you see during that period, I visited number of sort of cities, different sort of provinces, like Shenyang and many cities, and northern provinces and southern provinces, east provinces like that. And every place, the local authority, as usual, you see, we meet. And I really impressed those party members, Shuchi, the communist sort of party leader, really dedicated. And also thinking the real concern of the people. I'm very much impressed. So, while I was in Peking, I asked one official, the official who always look after us, I asked him, I want to join Communist Party. Then they say, better wait. So I think they know eventually party spoil. I think perhaps they know that. So in any way, I think around 1956, then the whole thing become leftist. So here, I think the lastly, I think a few months ago, one BBC's program about power of truth, power of gun. Although I didn't have the opportunity to listen to the whole program, that I thought, the communist, at the early period, I think both, power of truth, power of gun. Eventually, power of truth gone, power of gun remain. So that actually spoiled themselves. Any person who got sort of full power, unless self-discipline, moral principle there, very difficult. The power spoiled eventually because of themselves. So that exactly happened. And most of these totalitarian leaders like that. So in any way, I want to share with you we must make every effort to start mainland China transparency, stop censorship, and sort of distorted sort of propaganda. No use. It creates sort of counterproductive. The opposite way. Like that. That I think important, because it's even Tibet issue also. Once you see the things become transparent and with freedom of speech and eventually independent judiciary, Tibetan issue easily can solve. So this is so that's one aspect. Also, therefore, you see the Tibetan issue is three aspects: ecology, culture, human rights violation, and then genuine good relation with India and also rest of the world. So that China, most populated nation and ancient nation, that nation, in order to make significant contribution for world affairs, trust from the rest of the world is very necessary. Without that, instead of trust, fear comes. China cannot take constructive role. So that I think we must share with those narrow-minded leaders. And then lastly, another sort of point I want to share. Some Chinese sort of, communist sort of, officials, they consider we Tibetans are anti-Chinese. Never. As far as their wrong policy, injustice is concerned, of course we complain, we oppose. But we never oppose Chinese people. So one indication, this time, more Han people here. I hope nobody buy. I hope nobody sort of give you some money. If you attend here, you get $10,000 or $50,000. I think nobody do that. I think come here, your own expenses, right? Because invitation will stay on there. You send free ticket or not? Free ticket. Oh, you send all ticket. Oh. And anyway, you see, you come here. I know, last I think a few years, many of you will know, these Chinese Han people, educated, intelligent, these people, and also their cultural heritage of Chinese. Also, you see, some of them you see have, not necessarily all. Yeah. Then naturally, there are also the patriotism. Love Chinese culture, love Chinese people, love Chinese country. Naturally. With that, you see, come to help us. This is clearly shows our struggle is just a struggle and a noble struggle, and particularly our way of approach, not seeking separation, but genuine autonomy. So therefore, number of Chinese, last I think several years I met number of Chinese, and particularly last 2 years I met a number of Chinese scholars, teachers, professors, and writers, and also students. I think nearly a few hundred I met, and then we also notice the last over 2 years, more than 1,000 articles in Chinese language, wrote by Chinese, all fully support about our middle wave approach, and criticize their own government policy for Chinese own long-run interest, long-term interest. So this is a very healthy sign. So this clearly shows we are not anti-Chinese. Then, number of the European people here. One, their accusation is Tibetan try to Tibet issue internationalize. Many occasions I mentioned, we have two hands. Right hand usually considered more important. So right hand we reach out to Peking. If there's concrete result come here, then no work this left hand. But so long this right hand remain empty, then our left hand should extend. There are a lot of people who really showing concern about Tibet. I think various different reasons. So naturally, you see, we have to sort of use these sort of sympathy or these sort of support. So as soon as some concrete result come, left hand withdraw, say goodbye, thank you. Okay, like that. So therefore, who creates Tibetan issue internationalize? Not we. But you have to think who are really create Tibetan issue as becoming international issue. Then also recently, just a few, I think 2 months ago, I met one Chinese brother who just visited Lhasa. He told me in the front of the cathedral in Lhasa, as usual, many Tibetans making prostration faithfully. Just beside that, some Chinese security personnel and also some liberation army with full uniform and exercise their military military drill, shouting like that. And then
circumambulation.
Oh, I don't know that word. You see, Tibetan usually used to go like this way. Then, you see, the Chinese soldier, they go this way. And he noticed that. Then he told me, these Chinese really create sort of deliberately resentment in Tibetan mind. So he told me, real spiritist movement is there. I think it is true. And I always tell Tibetan, we Tibetan, of course, although very spiritual minded, but also the Tibetan loves money. So I'm not so secret. I always tell you, in Canada, in Switzerland, and in America, the number of illegal Tibetans, because of the went there. So these naturally not seeking spirituality, but seeking money. As there are sort of mischievous sort of activities, our Bureau, Delhi, usually these different embassies really good trust. Because of some of these people, firstly approach our sort of Bureau and seeking sort of support. The promise they will return. My office is to give sort of support, carry that support and get the support letter, and then they get the permission. Once they reach there, they forget all these promises. So as a result, trust from these embassy, including United States Embassy, our sort of bureau, now difficult. So I think this year, the new ambassador come and see me. I express my apology. Some of these mischievous Tibetan people's sort of behavior. This clearly shows Tibetan also is in love money. So Tibetan naturally, Tibet, materially backward. So for that, remain within the people from China. As far as material development is concerned, it's our own interest. Provided genuine autonomy, full sort of right to manage all our sort of Kasuta work, right? Like that. I think I remember 86, I think. I think 86. Pension Lama and Ngabe, I heard the radio, Pension Lama and Ngabe decided from 87, official language, autonomous regions, official language should be Tibetan. So this kind of sort of idea there. Now, not only official language, but even if you study in school also now reduced like that. So that I want to share with you. I think that's all. Thank you.